Hottest investor real estate markets in 2025. Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. So let's talk about buying property, rental property. Lots of choices in the United States, a lot of different rental markets. You have to know what you're doing before you commit to buying a rental property. If you buy in the wrong locale, in the wrong region, in the wrong state, you will regret it. So this assumes you already know how to operate a rental property and you're shopping for a new rental property investment, okay? So this is May 2025. What are the best rental markets to invest in? Okay, so here are the things we'd like to see. These are things to look for. A state with no state income tax, relatively affordable rental properties. What I mean by that is the cost of the property itself compared to the rental income is relatively affordable. So you can get upside down in some parts of the country, like in California or New York, where the cost of the property is so high, the rental income does not pencil out. It doesn't make sense to buy property there. You also want to look for a region where rents are affordable for the population. In other words, if the rents are really high in a region, fewer and fewer people can qualify to rent from you. Because generally, when you're qualifying a tenant, one of the things you check is what is your annual income or monthly income compared to the rental, the amount of the rent for the month. Usually you seek 2.5, 3 times income over the rent. In other words, let's say you have a rental unit renting for $2,000. You will seek someone who has a monthly income of $4,000. That's 2 times rent. $5,000, that's 2.5 times rent, or $6,000. That's 3 times rent. The rent's $2,000 a month, $6,000 a month income. That's someone making $72,000 a year. That's doable. Okay. There are parts of the country where the rent rates are so high, very few people can qualify to rent. So you want to avoid that because if the rents are really high, and I dealt with this in California for a very long time. People would come to California for the job market. They would show up at our rental properties and they would bitterly complain about how high rents were compared to where they came from. So you don't want that. You want to avoid that. So you want an affordable rent for people. You want as many people as possible to be able to qualify for a vacant unit you're trying to rent out. This is in bold, in capital letters, job market. You want a place where the job market is great. So this is what we're looking for. A state with no state income tax. The rental properties are not too expensive. The rents are not too high, so more and more people can afford to rent from you, and a healthy job market. Okay, so we're buying rental property. If you violate those, it becomes more difficult to make a good return on your investment. If the job market sucks, you're going to have a real tough time in that situation, and so on for those these other factors. So population growth is also important. For example, there are some parts of the country where people are migrating to. Sunbelt states, for example. There are parts of the country, though, where people are migrating out of. Illinois, New York, California are losing they're still losing population. There's a lot of reasons why. Okay, even though California has a decent job market, even though parts of New York have a decent job market, there are weird issues in some of those areas, in parts of those states, that have led people to leave, right? There have been a lot of out migration. Domestic migration is the phrase. You want to be aware of domestic migration in the country, inside the U.S. So population growth is important. If population is growing, that is a good place to invest in because there are more renters, right? If the population is declining, it's the opposite. There's a decline in the number of renters. If people are moving out of an area, demand drops. Right? If there's fewer and fewer people over time in an area like California, demand for rental units drops and rents will also thus drop. So not a good investment. It also will take longer to rent a vacant unit if lots of people are leaving an area. And again, California, Illinois, New York, ouch. Those states are losing population. There's a lot of reasons why. I'm not going to get into it. I think all of us know what's going on. Okay, so the importance of a job market. Jobs attract people. So we're talking about domestic migration. Where are people moving to? They're moving to places where they can earn a living, put food on the table, and raise a family. Job market. Job markets attract people. PPL is people. The secret sauce for investors is a combination of a healthy job market for renters and a relatively low cost of living for renters. It goes back to affordable rents for people. We want jobs attracting people to move to that area, and we want a relatively low level of rent prices, right? Because if the rents are too high, like I said, if the job market is great but the rents are too high, like in California, people leave. Because, okay, the job market's great, but I can't afford to live here. If you are an employer in parts of California, you will face a very tough problem attracting people to move to California from other parts of the country, because those people will say, okay, the salary in California is high, but it's all going to the cost of living. And there are other conditions in the region that make it an undesirable place to live. So how do you avoid a bad investment in property? Okay. So a really bad sign is if employers, companies are leaving that region. Okay, in California, where, I've got a lot of experience in California, lots of companies are leaving that state. That's a bad sign, okay? If employers like Tesla are having difficulty attracting employees to come to California to work, they will move to a region of the country with no state income tax, relatively affordable rental properties, and affordable rents for people, and a good job market. Tesla moved to Texas, right? There are a lot of companies who left California, just a lot of companies. If employers are leaving a region, avoid that region like the plague. It's just a very bad sign, because it means the employers are having a hard time hiring and business conditions are not favorable. So there are bad things happening in that region that for a real estate investment, you want to avoid. Okay, a good sign, something to look for, inbound migration. If lots of people are moving into a region, like I said, Sunbelt states, popular destination, no state income tax, affordable rents, and the rental properties are low, and the job market's healthy. A good sign, inbound migration, inbound domestic migration into an area. If you're a real estate investor, pay strict attention to that, because the more people moving into an area, the more competition it is to rent your vacant unit, okay? So let's talk about key performance indicators that you need to check before buying your rental property. Okay, with all these other things taken into consideration, let's assume we found a state with no state income tax or low state income tax, right? Because California state income tax, I believe, is like 16% or something. It's gotten way up there, 14%, something really high. So let's assume we've narrowed our choices down to a state that has low or no state income tax, relatively affordable rental properties, relatively affordable rents, and a healthy job market. Okay, a couple key performance indicators to now drill down on to help make a final decision. How many days is it taking in a region you're looking at to rent a vacant unit? Okay, you can find that online. You can research online. You can ask local realtors. You can talk to local property management companies, and you can talk to larger apartment complexes in that area to find out how many days are required to rent a vacant unit. If it takes a long time to rent a vacant unit, then you're not making any money on that unit. So you want the shortest amount of time possible. And if you think about it, if there's a lot of inbound migration, a lot of people moving in, there's competition for your vacant unit, so it should rent more quickly. The number of days to rent should be less, right? Okay, key performance indicator. Oh wait, let me just make sure I mention this. So you've already chosen the state, the region. You should compare your final choices with each other to find the region with the shortest number of days to rent out a vacant unit. Another key performance indicator, what is the vacancy rate? and that it can be different by neighborhood, it can be different by zip code, it can be different by part of the city or the metropolitan statistical area. It can be widely different, just a few miles apart, depending on a lot of factors. You can research the vacancy rate in an area by zip code, by neighborhood, because neighborhoods have names, right? Not always, but often neighborhoods have names. Even in one zip code, there will be different neighborhood names. You can research the vacancy rate by the name of the neighborhood and by the zip code. So just to give you a sense of what to look for, a 10% overall vacancy rate is very high. That's bad. That's a bad sign. If you're shopping in a region and you discover that the vacancy rate is about 10%, that's much higher than normal, because the average, the U.S. average vacancy rate is 6.6% right now in this month, May of 2025. The U.S. average vacancy rate in apartments, for apartments, 6.6% of apartments are vacant at any one time. A 10% vacancy rate, bail, walk away from that. On the other hand, if you find an area with a 3.5% vacancy rate, That's a good sign. That means it's pretty darn easy, relatively speaking, to rent out a vacant unit. Miami, Florida is an example that has that low of a vacancy rate, 3.5%. Okay, so what is it about Miami? No state income tax. Affordable rental properties, no, it kind of fails on that, truth be told. That's an expensive area to buy rental properties. Rents affordable for people? No, not really. But the job market is killer in Miami. A lot of financial services companies are moving to Miami, have moved to Miami, and are moving to Miami. The job market there is so hot that even with relatively highly priced rental properties and high rents, it could still be a great place to invest if you find the right property, especially if you can find what's called a value add property, a fixer upper property where you can buy, or a distressed property, something that's been foreclosed on, buy it on the cheap and use some elbow grease or use some sweat equity to improve the property and raise the rents if you can find the right property. But Miami's vacancy rate is 3.5%. Quite good if you're investing. 10%, not good. So in general, the states, I would just make this blanket statement, okay? And the following three states I would avoid: California, Illinois, and New York. The main reason is migration. Domestic migration is outward from those three states. People are leaving California, people are leaving Illinois, people are leaving New York still, okay? And that means it's harder to rent a unit. So you want to move. I mean, Sun Belt states are fantastic because the weather is decent. Some of those states have no or very low state income tax. The rents are still relatively affordable in many of those states, and they have healthy job markets. I mean, Tesla's not the only company moving to Sun Belt states. A lot of companies have moved to Texas. So that kind of gives you an idea of what to look for. Just to summarize, we want to buy in an area with a healthy job market, with inbound migration, people moving into the area, with a low vacancy rate, with a low time to rent a vacant unit, with an affordable cost of living for your renters, and no weird crime and no weird policy problems. There are certain parts of the country that have weird crime and policy problems, and I don't want to say anything more than that, but it makes it difficult if you're investing in property if there's crime, if there are unusual policy things. Like, for example, in California, the recent fires wiped out hundreds, thousands of homes. Apparently, only fewer than 20 homes have been approved to be rebuilt out of I think it was well over 1,000 homes that were destroyed by those fires in Southern California. So that's a weird policy problem because generally the local government should be looking out for its citizens, and it should be streamlining the permit process so people can rebuild, so their insurance company can start the process of rebuilding their home using concrete instead of the standard wood frame homes, and it's not happening. So that's a weird policy problem. That's common in California, unfortunately. If you have any questions about any of this, I'm trying to lay out what to look for when you're buying a rental property. Inbound migration is a really important one, and if you look up domestic migration online, you can find a ton of information about areas of the country people are leaving and areas of the country people are going. Domestic migration. So if you have any questions, please post in the comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I really want to thank everyone for watching, and have a great day.